Okay, looks like we're recording. Here we go. So let's start from scratch on what we talked about today's lesson. Let's open up Unity. Okay, that's going. Let's bring that up here. So let's go up. So we're in projects, right? We're gonna hit new. 2D. You can name it 2D test. Create. We're gonna let it load. Where did my clipboard go? That's right. I'll just give it a sec. Shouldn't take too long. I don't think there's a pause button in here, but I can always edit that out later. Okay, good. Here we go. So we have our scene here and our game. The game is where it'll actually show up. So this little white window here is where everything is going to show up in game in the blue. So what we're going to do is we need to add some objects. So we're going to go to this hierarchy over here, and we're going to right click, and we're going to add a 3D object, and we're going to put a cube in. Now the cube can be modified by using different things. So we can use the hand tool, and the hand tool moves our whole scene. The move tool can move your object. You can either move it vertically or horizontally, or you can select in the middle in this yellow square, and that'll move it in both. And if you go back up here, this little button with the 2 arrows, that'll rotate it any different direction you want there. And then here you have scale, so you can scale it vertically, make it shorter, taller, and then you also can make it horizontally longer. So you can just drag, oops, this little node here. But I like to use this one because I can just, so this one is called, well, it's just RECT tool. So I just scale it over to the edges of this white box. You also can make it shorter here. Once you have it the way you like it, you select it, and then you can hit the move tool, bring it all the way at the bottom. So I'm going to do, actually before I duplicate, I'm going to note one thing here. So when you create this, initially it comes with the box collider, but you want to delete that, remove component, so you're still selected on this. Hey, babe, I'm making a video. What do you need?
I was just hungry because it's lunchtime.
Yeah, I'll make you something just for you. Okay. So we're selected on the object. Now, before I removed it, remember you can always pause this and rewind and go back to points that I've mentioned, okay? So we're selecting our object. We're going to add component. We're going to go to Physics 2D, Box Collider 2D. So we're going to select Box Collider. So when we add a Box Collider, it's saying that there's a sort of an invisible force around this object that makes it so nothing can pass through it when you hit play. So now that we have a Box Collider 2D, we're done with that, and we can copy and paste it. So if you want to make another one of this object, so you can select it. So say I want to make a roof, like we want to make a room here, right? So I'm going to copy the bottom, hit Control C and then Control V, and that'll make a duplicate, and then I can just bring it up. Okay? So say I want to make some walls for the left and the right. So I can do the same thing. I can do Control C and V, and then move it down so I have another copy. And so I want to make it vertical. So I'm going to make this rectangle vertical. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to change this. But you notice in the right, so you can move it by hand, Or you can go over here. So watch what happens in the corner. See that Z on the top right? So say I want to change it, you can just put 45? Nope, 90. That's what I meant. 90 degrees, and that makes it perfectly vertical. So that takes out your guesswork. So select it. You can only, if you want to, you can just select the green arrow, bring that all the way over to the side. Let's make another one. Control Z, Control V. Oops. Let's move it over here. So now we have a room. And don't worry about these lines up here for now. So each one of these has something called a box collider. Remember, that's what makes something not pass through it. I can actually show you. So if we go over here, it looks like we can edit the collider. So click this, you see that now you have little green dots. So you can see that green bar, that's your collider. So we're going to bring it just at the same line as the orange there. So we'll select off that. Now we're going to make maybe a couple little ramps to give it, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a circle. And the circle is going to be the object that moves, that has gravity. So these rectangles, they don't have gravity, they're stationary. So I have all these. Let's make a ramp. So we're going to do Control C and V. So we're copying it. Oops. And let's do this. Bring a little bit of an angle. Let's make another one on the other side. Control Z, Control V. Go over here. And then select our rotate tool up top. Rotate with 2 arrows. Grab that, and we'll change it. So now we have a couple little ramps. Now let's go over to the hierarchy. Let's make another object. Let's make a 3D object. We're going to make a sphere. Okay. So click on that, and you can change the size. So if you just grab one of these little blue circles on the corners and you just move it around, it's going to make it a different shape. Now it's sort of oblong. Now if you want to make it so that it scales up perfectly, you hold down Shift on your keyboard. Hold Shift and drag. Or if you want to make it smaller or bigger. So let's make it a little bit smaller. We're going to go back to the Move tool, move it up here. Okay. Now in order to give this physics, to give it gravity, we're going to click on the sphere, and we're going to, let's give it, so if you go to Add Component, in the Inspector window, go to Physics 2D, and scroll down, look through this list, or you can type it in. So you can type in RIG, so now there's rigid body. So we're going to, oops. Oh, back that up. Let's remove the sphere collider. So let's remove, because we want to make it a 2D, not a 3D. So we're going to remove that. So I'll go back. I'll show you again. So we click on this, and there's a sphere collider. Is that for me? What is it?
Try it.
Ooh, thank you. Ooh, that's yummy. Thank you. I was thirsty. So we're clicking on our circle, and we're going to remove this sphere collider by right-clicking, remove, okay? And we're going to add component. We're going to add a, oh, let's back up a second so I don't get ahead of myself. We're going to add something called Physics 2D. Go into that menu, and then find the rigid body. Remember, you can type it, RIG. So rigid body 2D, make sure it's 2. Now it's going to add this in the inspector. So we have the rigid body, and we also want to make sure that it has, go to Physics 2D, and that it has a circle collider 2D. Because originally it was just a circle collider without the 2D. So we want to make sure it says 2D. So now these work together. We didn't get any errors that time. So if you look in here, we have a few different things. We have body type, material, simulated, auto mass. We can click that and it just automatically changes everything, but we want to do the manual way. So let's change some numbers. So by default it comes with 1. So let's change the mass. That means it's bigger, it's heavier. And then gravity, we can change the gravity at what rate it drops, or which way the gravity pulls it to the ground. So we'll change that to maybe a 2. See what happens. Okay, and so that's all inside of this circle, the parameters in the inspector. So rigid body that gives it mass and gravity, and our collider. And our collider, which is the outside of the circle that collides with the surface of all these objects. But we want to give it bounce. We want to give it a little bit of character. And we talked about that in class. So what we're going to do there, we're going to go down to project. We're going to create. It's going to bring up this window. You're going to have to scroll down probably, but in here you can see all the different objects and things I can add. So we're going to go to this one here. It's called physical material. Not the 2, actually, no, we're going to do 2D. We'll click on 2D. Okay, so once we click on 2D, it's going to put this little guy down here in the assets. But we want to make sure that this gets attached to this, because right now we just created this asset and we want to add it to the sphere. So we're going to click on that. Okay, and you see this rigid body section here. We want to move this to this spot where it says material. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click on, oops, while that's selected, we're going to hold this and drag that over here. Okay, make sure that it's still selected. This has to be selected. Click, hold that, drag it over to the rigid body 2D in the material slot, and then let go. Now you see that that little ball is in the material slot here. Now that has a property. Well, if you click on the new physical material, you'll notice when you click on that, on the top right in the inspector, you're going to see friction and bounciness. So right now there's no bounciness. Let's see what happens if we hit play. So it rolls down the ramp and stops, which is pretty good. But we want to change the properties in this asset. So we're going to make it bouncy, because right now there's no bounce. So let's give it 2 bounce. Let's see what happens. Let's go. So we're in game. Remember, there's these 2 little tabs here. There's scene, which is where you edit everything and you move. And there's game. So in game, you can't select anything. But at the top, we're going to hit play and see what happens. Whoa, that was way too much bounciness. Let's bring it down a notch. Let's hit play, see what it does. That's a lot better. That's still a lot of bounce. Let's bring it down to maybe 0.7. Okay. So that's pretty cool. What if we had more than just 1? Let's go back to scene view. Let's click the little ball. Let's copy it, okay? So let's do Control C, Control V. Once we've done that, we can have a copy of it. Let's do it again. Control Z, C, Control V. Now we have 3. And each one of these, since I copied it from the original, it's going to have the new physics material, bouncy and friction, as well as having a rigid body and a collider. And the collider collides with other objects. Now that we have 3 in there, let's see what it does. Oops. There we go. Let's do that again. Let's go to game view, which is the blue area, and hit play. That was pretty cool, but let's give it some more bounce. When you add the asset, this asset goes into each sphere. So let's bring up the bounciness to maybe 1.2. See what it does. Now that's fun. That's really cool. I'm probably going to glitch out because they're going really fast. See? Yep. Maybe a little too much. Let's go to 0.9. Very cool. We'll say that's a little boring. I want to add some more objects to my scene. So we go back to scene. And let's copy this plane right here. This really short rectangle. So let's copy, Control Z, C, Control V. Let's bring this up. Let's edit it. So let's go up top to the left. You see that here? I'm going to click on that. I'm going to change the size. Bring it down here. Let's do that. Now remember, since I copied this, it has a collider on it. Remember? This green, that's your collider. Make sure it's within the box. So this little button right here, little line with 3 little squares, that's your editor for your collider. So we have a box. That's cool. So let's see what happens when I add that to the scene. Remember, go to game, then hit play and see what happens. Pretty cool, huh? Now, if you want to go a step further in scene, let's talk about adding color and light. So here in our hierarchy, you can see all of the objects, right? So we have cubes, a sphere, spheres, cube, your camera. We're not going to worry about our camera right now. But say you want to add a light source. So you're going to right click. Right down here, here's lights. Let's do a directional light. That kind of brightens things up, doesn't it? Also down here, we're going to add assets. This is your assets, all your physics materials, all sorts of stuff. So we're going to hit create, right down here, create. And we're going to look for the one that says material. Here we go. Now by default, it's just gray. So our assets here, and if you go to the top right in our inspector, that's your color. So we're going to click on this white, and you have this color wheel that pops up. So we can click anywhere on the color wheel. Say I want purple. And once you click the purple here, go into the square and then make it lighter, brighter. You can close that down. Now see, it's changed. Now you can take this, you can just drag it onto whatever you want. So say I want to make that purple. Let's make another one, make another color. Because this material is just for these two objects. And we can rename it too. But we're not going to do that for now. Let's just create another one, material. And let's change that material to a different color. So this material, over here in the inspector, and we're going to go to the color wheel. Let's make green. Close that down. So now it's green. And you can just move it over to any object you want. Let's see, let's make these purple. And let's go to game. Hit play. There you go. Remember, in order for these to work, these circles to work with the rest of the objects, it has to have a rigid body 2D and it has to have a circle collider 2D. If it has a regular circle collider, you make sure you remove that by right-clicking, remove. Oh, it has to be 2D. You do that by going to Add Components, Physics 2D. You add your collider 2D as well as your rigid body. Okay? So mess with these settings, mess with mass and gravity. Okay? Don't go too high, otherwise it's going to make things a little goofy. See, watch, I'll show you. If I change the gravity of these guys here, let's see. Oh, never mind. Change the gravity of this one. They're all going to be separate. So I'm going to change the gravity of this one to 8. This one's going to have a gravity of 1. This one will have a gravity of 0.5. Okay. Now that we have changed the properties here, go to Game, Play, see what happens when we changed. See the difference in how... So the gravity on this third one, it's not being affected. It's almost like I put helium in it, right? See this one right here? Next to the purple rectangle? Looks like that one's not going to stop moving. So have fun with it, okay? So add objects by right-clicking 3D objects. I know I talked about 2D, oops, let's go back to scene. I talked about using rigid body in 2D because this is a 2D game platform. But to add these objects, you go into the hierarchy and add 3D objects. So cubes, spheres, try capsule, try a cylinder, try a quad. And once you have those objects in, add rigid body 2D, circle collider 2D, as well as adding a new physics material 2D right here. And that was in project. So this right here. Once you make it, it shows up here. But in order for this bounciness to work, this needs to be dragged all the way over to the rigid body material slot. It needs to go in here and then you let go. Okay? Test this out. Let me know what you think. If it works, if it doesn't, email me. We'll figure it out. All right? Thanks, guys.